Hello, everybody. I wanted to discuss the soul, which is an important part of Gurdjieff's teachings, and what he says his teachings are helping one to develop. In many traditions, they talk about that we've all got souls, though Gurdjieff says we're born only with the embryo of a soul and we have to develop it if we find the way to do it. I remember reading Madame Blavatsky's work, and one of her notes that or things that she noticed was that she was going down the park with some friends, how many soulless people were walking the planet. And I still feel that today there's many soulless people. Maybe because when they were children, something happened to them that stopped them wanting to develop their soul. We're not told to develop our souls, we're just told we've got one. But it's whether we awaken our conscience to make it develop our soul. Many people don't do that. So let me just start with a quote from Views from the Real World. A soul is a luxury. No one has yet been born with a fully developed soul. A soul may disintegrate immediately after death, or it may do so after a certain time. For example, a soul may be crystallized within the limits of the earth and may remain there, yet not be crystallized for the sun. So we've got this embryo of the soul in us, and we want to develop it as we go through, for example, the Gurdjieff's teachings. That's what his says all that effort is about, is to develop our soul so that when we do die and leave this physical plane, our soul will live on and we will hopefully go on to the next stage. Our physical body dies, but we want our soul to continue. And I used to talk to other teachers, not necessarily Gurdjieff ones, but ones in other traditions, of, well, what's the difference between the soul and the spirit? And different traditions seem to have different ideas, but what I gather from Gurdjieff is the spirit is the divine spirit. We've all got a spark of the divine in us, and the soul is our essence that needs to be developed so that we can carry on with the divine's work. It's with our soul that we do the divine's work. So this is a quote from Life is Real Only Then When I Am. If all men had a soul, long ago there would have been no room left on earth for poisonous plants or wild beasts, and even evil would have ceased to exist. Soul is for the lazy fantasy. For the lazy, soul is a mirage, luxury for the indulger in suffering. It is the determiner, the seal of personality, the way and the link to the maker and creator. Soul is the residue of education, the prime source of patience. It is also testimony of the merit of the essence of eternal being. Leader of the will, its presence is, I am. It is a particle of the all-being. It was so and always will be. And as I said in a previous show, I was saying about how, looking from the Jewish Kabbalah way of things, Adam Kadmon is the universe, a representation of the divine source. And we are all inside it. I think I used the word germs, but we're all particles inside Adam Kadmon. And it's what we're doing is how it's affecting the divine. And we're here hopefully to do the right things for the divine, to help the divine continue its creating the world and the universe and everything. And I was discussing this with a friend, and we both came up between us with this analogy of, if Adam Kadmon's asleep, which many traditions say that the divine is asleep and we're part of his sleeping pattern, then we can either be the dream or the nightmare. And being the dream is us working with the divine and working on ourselves, and being the nightmare is where we're not working with the divine and living our egotistical ways. So I want to be a dream, not a nightmare. So carrying on with Life is Real Only Then When I Am. What they call the soul does really exist, but not everybody necessarily has one. A soul is not born with a man and can neither unfold nor take form in him so long as his body is not fully developed. It is a luxury that can only appear and attain completion in the period of responsible age, that is to say, in a man's maturity. The soul, like the physical body, is also matter, only it consists of finer matter. And this all comes back to the vibrations that Gurdjieff discusses. The vibrations, everything has a vibration, and the finer matter has the finer vibration. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make ourselves finer so that we vibrate with the divine vibrations. The more denser things are, more negative, or for example, when we're feeling down, lonely, lowly, unloved. We have a heavy heart. We're feeling dense. We're feeling heavy. And when you're feeling good and happy and full of love and joyful, you feel light and, you know, just go about your business in a happy-go-lucky kind of way. So there is a difference in even in how our emotions work with us, how our emotions vibrate at a vibration at a different frequency for each one. And the more negative it is, or the more demonstrative, the denser it is, and the more lighter is, the more happier, more affirmative the working with the divine is. And as you've probably seen in many traditions, they talk about the light. Christ had the light, or Moses had a shining around him. These are people that were working on their energies inside themselves, that were making them a finer vibration so that they could carry the divine way. They connected with all the energies that the divine's putting out there. And as you know, in the Gurdjieff work, he talks a lot about the cosmic energies and how all the different energies normally works in laws of three, of making different energies come together, positive, negative, and a neutralizing, then affect the next stage, and then the next stage. So each energy is being slowly either made denser if it's coming down, or if it's going up, we're trying to send a lighter, more evolutionary form of the energies. So the soul, like the physical body, is also matter, only it consists of finer matter. The matter from which the soul is formed and from which it later nourishes and perfects itself is, in general, elaborated during the processes that take place between the two essential forces upon which the entire universe is founded. The matter in which the soul is coated can be produced exclusively by the action of these two forces, which are called good and evil by ancient science, or affirmation and negation, while contemporary science calls them attraction and repulsion. And you probably have noticed that if you go out into the world of, deep, dark thoughts, you don't attract many things. In fact, if things start to go wrong and you drop that cup of coffee or whatever, but when you're feeling in a good mood and feeling the higher vibration of an attraction, you do attract people to you, sometimes unwanted people, but it's because you're giving out that light and that lighter vibration that people notice. They might not be able to understand what it is, but people are attracted to it. It is magnetic. In the common presence of a man, these two forces have their source in two of the totalities of general psychic functioning. One of them coincides with that function whose factors proceed from the results of impressions received from outside, and the other appeared as a function whose factors issue chiefly from the results of the specific functioning of the organs as determined by heredity. So working on ourselves, if we're telling ourselves positive things, and I know things aren't always positive, we can have the most positive idea about how our day is going to be and things go wrong, but then it's back to how do we handle it, how do we work with it, rather than falling down into more denser vibrations or negative states. When you're feeling more centered, you can handle what is being thrown at you in a better way. So this is from Meetings with Remarkable Men. Gurdjieff's talking to his father. I asked him what personal opinion he had formed during his life about whether man has a soul and whether it is immortal. So this is the father replying, in that soul which a man supposedly has, as people believe, and of which they say exists independently after death and transmigrates, I do not believe, and yet in the course of a man's life, something does form itself in him. This is for me beyond all doubt. A man is born with a certain property, and thanks to this property, in the course of his life, certain of his experiences elaborate in him a certain substance, and from this substance there is gradually formed in him something or other which can acquire a life almost independent of the physical body. Although this something is formed from the same substance as the physical body of a man, it has a much finer materiality, and it must be assumed a much greater sensitivity towards all kinds of perceptions. And in that quote, The word something is in quotation marks. Something in quotation marks is used a lot in the Gurdjieff work. He often discusses about creating that something, working on that something. And, I'm beginning to realize now that what he's meaning is the soul. He's talking about developing your soul, that something that will develop and have, as it says here, greater sensitivity in all kinds of perceptions, because your soul's vibrating when it's working, when you've worked upon it, in a finer vibration, on a finer level. So it's picking up all the other things that in our normal everyday life we do not pick up. So this is also carrying on in Meetings with Remarkable Men, and he's now talking to Father Giovanni. Father Giovanni said that before counting on really coming under the effects and influences of the higher forces, it was absolutely necessary to have a soul, which it was possible to acquire only through voluntary and involuntary experiences and information intentionally learned about real events which had taken place in the past. So, excuse me, it's not just your everyday life, it's also studying history and other teachers and how humanity has, we learn from our mistakes. I know there's this real thing going on at the moment about cancel culture, which I think is a bit of a mistake, because to get rid of, because we need to learn from the mistakes of the people of the past. We're not rubbing it in people's faces, or they were slave masters or anything. We should be learning from them statues. They were slave masters, and we don't want that kind of thing. My own idea is, instead of putting all them statues down, let's put up some ones about people that brought in emancipation or worked for themselves, and put them there as well with them, so that we've got all sides of the story, because we need to know our histories. And I know they say only winners write the history, but in this last century, people began to see all the different stories and ideas that were going with all different histories, that there's just not one voice that tells humanity's history. There are many voices that tell humanity's history. So carrying on with Giovanni, he convincingly added that this in its turn was possible almost exclusively in youth, when the definite data received from great nature are not yet spent on unnecessary fantastic aims, which appear to be good owing only to the abnormally established conditions of the life of people. I shall place them, Father Giovanni's remarkable thoughts replying to Professor Skridlov's question, what can we do, as relating to the question of the soul, that is, the third independently formed part of the common presence of a man, in the chapter entitled The Divine Body of Man and Its Needs and Possible Manifestations According to Law. And many people have been looking for that chapter in Gurdjieff's writings, and say he never wrote it, but he did. He wrote it in All and Everything, but just not under that title. It's the whole books give us all and everything of what we have to do. So I'm now going to go to All and Everything. Higher being bodies, or as they are called on some planets, souls, arise in the free brain beings breeding on all planets, except those before reaching which the emanations of our most holy Son Absolute, owing to repeated deflections, gradually lose the fullness of their strength and eventually cease entirely to contain the vivific power for coating higher being bodies. Which is why we need to work on ourselves, because we're trying to reach them higher states of ourselves, and them higher states are what help develop the soul. He's actually saying here that the higher being bodies are the souls, which I thought it was the connection of the lower and the higher, but I shall not confuse everyone. He's saying here higher being bodies of ourselves are our souls, and that's what we're attaining to. And when we're living our day-to-day lives, we're not in touch with our higher being bodies unless we work on ourselves and begin to harmonize ourselves. So also from All and Everything, blessed is he that hath a soul, blessed is also is he who has not. But grief and sorrow to him that have in himself its conception. So if you've already developed your soul, well and good, you're going to go on to the next stage. And I'd love to hear from you and learn from you. If you don't have a soul and aren't interested in your soul, or development of it, you're still blessed in that ignorance. Naive but happy, I suppose, would be a way of saying it. But those that have realized they have a conception of the soul and a chance to start working on it, well, that's a hard path to take. And really, he's wishing us all luck, that we go forward and do develop ourselves and do create that soul and reach our higher being bodies. Margaret Anderson says it in another way. Happy is he who has the soul. Happy is he who has not, but grief and sorrow to him who has the conception and does not accomplish it. Because we might not do it, might not develop our souls. We might be doing all this studying, but if we don't put in enough effort, we won't get the results we want. Can't just do it willy-nilly. So carrying on with all and everything. The sacred cosmic substances required for the coating of the highest being body, which they call soul, can be assimilated and correspondingly transformed and coated in them, just as in us, exclusively only from the process of Ayat Sariti Taurasinian contemplation, actualized in the common presence by the cognized intention on the part of all their spiritualized independent parts. So that's one of Gurdjieff's words there, of how he uses so that it expresses exactly what he means. And I did a show on language, so hopefully you've seen that one, of Gurdjieff's language, that is. So he's saying here we need to we work on ourselves, but we also need the outside sacred cosmic forces to work with us, but we need to attune to them so that we can develop our souls. So carrying on with all and everything, there might be transformed and crystallized also those active elements from which new independent formations might be coated in them themselves, with the inherent possibility of acquiring individual reason. So as we're developing our soul, we're also getting the individual reason with a capital R, not reason with a little r, because to have our soul and to be reaching our higher selves, we need that state of acquired reason. So carrying on with all and everything. This new part of these two natured beings began to absorb and assimilate into themselves such cosmic I'll start that again. This new part of these two natured beings began to absorb and assimilate into themselves such cosmic substances as had their arising immediately from the most holy Theo Mert Malogos, and similarities of a third kind began to be coated in them, the higher sacred parts of beings, which we now call higher being bodies. And he's talking about this during the chapter about how humanity came to be as it is, and how we get our souls is by developing ourselves again with the originally we were two natured, and that third nature has been put into us so that we can start developing our souls, which is again coming to the higher sacred parts of ourselves. So this is from views from the real world. The body, when born, is the result of many things and is just an empty possibility. Man is born without a soul, but it is possible to make one. Heredity is not important for the soul. Each man has many things he must change. They are individual, but beyond that point, preparation cannot help. The ways are different, but all must get to Philadelphia. But whichever way we take, our aim is to develop our soul, to fulfill our higher destiny. We are born in one river where the drops are passive, but he who works on himself is passive on the outside and active inside. Both lives are according to law. One goes by the law of involution, the other by the law of evolution. So the law of involution is the divine cosmic substances coming down onto us, and the law of evolution is us working with them and sending them back out again to help the divine. And I know he says here the ways are different, but all must go to Philadelphia. It's kind of like all roads lead to Rome. there are different paths to it, but you've got to find the one that suits you. And hopefully the Gurdjieff way is the one for you if you put the effort in. It takes a lot of effort, as I've said before, and we're all here to help each other and hopefully develop, and there's other teachers out there to look at too. So still from views from the real world. A soul. This is the aim of all religions, of all schools. It is only an aim, a possibility, it is not a fact. A child is never born with a soul. A soul can be acquired only in the course of life. Most people live all their lives without a soul, without a master, and for ordinary life a soul is quite unnecessary. But a soul cannot be born from anything. Everything is material, and so is the soul, and it consists of very fine matter. So back again to getting in touch with the finer matters, the finer cosmic substances that are coming down. And I, like I was saying earlier, there's soulless people out there. I meet many soulless people. We can perhaps offer them the chance to try and develop their soul, but they've got to want to, and that's one of the important things in this work. You've got to want to do it. You need a desire to do it. You need to wish to do it. Your biggest aim. So carrying on from views from the real world. So he's been talking about death. This does not mean physical death. From that death, there is no necessity to rise again, because if there is a soul and it is immortal, it can get along without the body, the loss of which we call death. So he's saying here, you know, we can go on to another stage, and I think he was talking about reincarnation back then, of people coming back again and again, or even recurrence. You'll be coming back to this world if you don't develop your soul. But if you do develop your soul, you'll go on to the next realms and the next worlds and the next stage of whatever all this is. Kind of like in the Buddhist teachings of getting off the wheel of life. There are only certain ways to get off the wheel of life. Otherwise, you keep coming back to it over and over again. Developing your soul in the Gurdjieff tradition is the way to get off this wheel of life, if that's what you want to do. Maybe you enjoy life too much, you want to keep coming back to this planet. It's up to you. It's whether you want to do it. But good luck. And I hope to see all you soulful people soon. I want a soulful life, and I hope you do too.